It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video for The Walking Dead. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the official trailer that they released for the Daryl Dixon spinoff. Some pretty awesome stuff, some big reveals as far as what we can expect, and there are some very interesting and unexpected details in this trailer that we're going to be breaking down. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break this down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's dive right into it. Now, there are some parts of this trailer that are in French, but the subtitle was in English, so we're gonna just go through the subtitle, and I'm gonna talk through what I think is going on and what the dialogues mean and everything like that. So this trailer starts with this pretty awesome shot of what appears to be like some wooded areas, I'm assuming of France, likely because this is where this show is going to take place. And we obviously have the title card, The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, which is cool. I still don't know why they didn't title this series properly, because everything else has a proper title. Even the Rick and Michonne now has a title. So why are they not changing this? I have no idea, but we're going to go with it. And then we have this shot of the AMC logos, and also we see a boat in the middle of the ocean. Obviously, we know that Daryl is gonna wash ashore to France, so that's basically what this is showing. It's showing Daryl on a capsized boat and he's being washed ashore. At this point, we don't know how this happens. They're gonna have to be pretty clever how they explain this to make it realistic and reasonable. So we're gonna have to wait and see how they do it, but there's a good chance they're gonna walk a fine line between BSing it and actually explaining it. You know what I mean? But we do see him washing ashore. Obviously, this is some beach in France. I'm assuming southern part of the country. But we do see Daryl walking alongside some rail tracks, which actually reminds me of Terminus, but that's beside the point. We see him here as well as he walks right by this walker, which has some trees and vegetations growing out of it, which is pretty cool. But in the voiceover, Daryl says, "My name is Daryl Dixon." So obviously, the theme of this trailer is that it's really Daryl, for the most part, talking on a radio to someone. And he's basically introducing himself here. And then he says, "I come from a place called the Commonwealth." So he's telling the people that are listening where he's from. Not a great thing. I mean, he has to be wiser to know to give away information like that. But we're going to have to wait and see how this comes together. But we have this pretty awesome, iconic, I'm assuming iconic location in France. Daryl is on top of this bridge. He's walking, so that's pretty cool. And then we see the radio here that he was talking in. It looks like maybe it's a tape, now that I look at it clearly. But he says it's in America, so he's saying where the Commonwealth is. And then we have him here as well as he's talking on the radio. I'm assuming that he spoke to someone and someone recorded their conversation or something along those lines. But we do see this girl here looking at this other guy. I'm assuming these are soldiers of some sort, some soldiers in France. So that's interesting. We have the guy here. He has like a Mike Tyson tattoo. I'm going to call him French Mike Tyson from here on out. I don't know his name, but I'm going to call him that to make things easier. Girl actually reminded me a lot of the girl that we saw in the post-credit scene of the Walking Dead World Beyond, which actually also took place in France, that particular post-credit scene. So that's definitely super interesting. I wonder if there's a connection. There probably is. But then we have this shot of some sort of castle or some sort of church or cathedral or something in France. And then we have this shot of Daryl in the same location. And then we have this pretty interesting shot of what I'm assuming is the inside of that cathedral. They have like a mini garden in the middle, so that's cool. There's nuns there, so that's also super interesting. The theme of Daryl meeting nuns and having to help nuns is a big part of this show. And then we have this shot of this nun talking to Daryl. She says, "How did you come to be in France?" I want to know that, but they're not going to tell us exactly in this trailer. But Daryl responds with a bunch of bad decisions. Not too much to say, I mean, that doesn't really tell us anything. The only thing this connects to is something else that's going to come later on in the trailer, which we're going to talk about. But Daryl is here in the woods. This shot of a walker being trapped by some tree branches and stuff like that. And then we have this shot of Daryl, I think, punching this guy just randomly. And then we have this shot of Daryl fighting some other guys here, and then punching this guy here. And then we have this interesting shot of what appears to be like a maybe port area. And there's an explosion, and it looks like there's a walker there, and it looks like someone is jumping down. Could be Daryl. And then we have Daryl here with the nun in that same cathedral near the garden where the garden was. We see here as well the same garden. And then he says, "How'd you end up here?" So Daryl is asking the nuns, "How'd you end up here?" And then the nun says, "A bunch of good decisions." So this goes back to what Daryl says, which is a bunch of bad decisions. So she's saying, "We made a bunch of good decisions, which is why we're here." So it's a flip on that. Not much to really break down. And then Daryl here, next to what I'm assuming is that garden that we saw, we have him looking at this young boy that he's actually going to be tasked to protect. That might remind you of something. It reminded me of that as well. We'll come back to it. But then we have Daryl here just looking at the boy. Kind of creepy, but anyway. But in the voiceover, the nun says, "We've been waiting for you." And then the boy introduces himself, says, "I'm Lauren." And then the nun says, "You're the messenger to deliver Lauren." So, I mean, at this point, it seems like there's a loose similarity, but I feel like it's more than that. It feels like they're really following the same type of story as what we had in The Last of Us. Joel was selected to protect a young girl. Ellie looks like it's the same. Daryl is being not hired, but being selected to protect or deliver or whatever this young boy named Lauren. I feel like it's very similar. I could be wrong, but it feels like pretty close or similar, I would say, at least. But then we have Daryl here with a WTF look on his face, which makes sense. That was my face as well when I heard that. And then we have this shot of Daryl looking at a bunch of walkers that are down below. This is a pretty cool shot of what I'm assuming is like small towns and small cities in France. This shot of this female, it could be the same one that we saw earlier, wearing like a soldier type clothing in a very fancy place. She says, "The American, find the man and kill him." So it looks like these soldiers, whoever they are, they're gonna be coming in to find Daryl and kill him. It could be because of what he's doing, because he's selected to protect the young boy Lauren, or it could be because of a different reason. And then we have this shot of Daryl obviously walking away from something. And then we have this shot of a bunch of soldiers with guns, like heavy duty guns. And I'm assuming that they're there to find Daryl. One of them says, "I'll find him for you." And we have this shot of him shooting someone or trying to shoot Daryl, I think, as he's running away. And it's the same Mike Tyson looking dude. So the French Mike Tyson. And then we have this shot of Daryl. Pretty cool shot of him. He's near that same cathedral. And then we have this shot of the French Mike Tyson saying, "I won't stop." So he's determined to find Daryl. And then we have Daryl here in the woods, and then the nun here saying, "I know you can get him there to safety." So it looks like she's telling Daryl that she wants Daryl to take the young boy, Lauren, to some safe location. Again, pretty close to The Last of Us, but we're gonna have to wait and see if it is, in fact, the same. And then we see Daryl and the young boy together. We see Daryl here on some sort of a mountain. This looks pretty awesome, like the scenery and everything. We have the nun and Daryl here next to a wall full of like heavy duty guns. This reminded me of like John Wick. So it looks like Daryl is the John Wick of the apocalypse. And then she says he's ready, referring to the boy. And then Daryl says, "Ready for what?" in a confused manner. And then we have Daryl here. It looks like he's either in a cell or he's next to like a fence. Tough to tell. But we do know that Daryl does get arrested by these group of soldiers in season 1 at some point, which is interesting. But he has a knife in hand. It actually reminds me of the knife Carol used to have. But then we see this shot of the young boy and some other people in like a underground tunnel or something. We have this beautiful shot of the cathedral or church or some cathedral. It's not the same one. So that's super awesome. And then we have the nun here saying to lead the revival of humanity. So that's interesting. I mean, Daryl is super confused to hear that. I am as well. But that doesn't help the situation in my prediction that this is too much like The Last of Us. Like, this could have very well been a thing that someone from Last of Us says about Ellie. You know what I mean? So that's a little too much, I think. Anyway, we have this shot of the nuns grabbing some weapons. We have the nuns here as well. And then we have Daryl here picking his weapon, which is a crossbow. I'm not surprised. And then we have this shot of the woods, cool shot. And then we have this fall on the title card. We have the group of soldiers led by the French Mike Tyson walking into that cathedral where the nuns are. I'm assuming they're there to search the place to try to find the American or Daryl. We have Daryl getting a bath, which is cool. Not really, but anyway. We have Daryl here shooting some walkers. And then we have another title card, experience a new chapter. And then we have Daryl walking up to some graves. Looks pretty dark and gritty. I like it. And then we have this shot of what appears to be some soldiers knocking the door down and pointing the gun at some people. I'm assuming that they're there searching for Daryl or something. And then we have this shot of the nun, Daryl, and the boy. Now, the nun is not wearing the clothing that she was wearing earlier. And then we have this shot of Daryl fighting the French Mike Tyson dude. So it looks like they have a bit of a fight. So that's cool. And then we have this title card in the Walking Dead saga. So a new chapter in the Walking Dead saga. We have Daryl and the nun looking at this walker. It looks like a young boy as well. Looks pretty dark and gritty. Again, I like that. So that's cool. And then we have Daryl here saying things happen. And then we have this shot of him being surrounded by walkers and then shooting at these walkers, and then it explodes. So it's that type of weapon where you shoot it and it has like a grenade in it or something. So that's awesome. And then we have this shot of like a guy. He looks super happy, which is weird. Anyway, not sure if he's a new survivor or if he is part of that group that we saw with the nuns and everyone. And then we have this shot, which I think is some sort of a flashback of early in the apocalypse in France. It looks like there are walkers in the train, people running. It reminds me a lot of like Train to Busan or something. So that's super cool. But in the voiceover, Daryl says things that change you, you know. So basically, he's saying things happen that change you. That's what he's saying. This connects to what he said earlier. And then we have this shot of the nun, the same nun, looking at the train that we saw. So it looks like we're going to get a flashback with her during early days of the apocalypse, which is awesome. I actually really like that. We have Daryl with his weapon. Now, this is the type of weapon that he was using in the War with the Whispers. It was called like the Morning Star or something. So it's interesting that he has that there. And then in the voiceover, the nun says, maybe we're the same that way. So there's similarities between the characters and they're just highlighting that here. We have the boy, the nun, and some other female character here in the woods. And then we have this shot of Daryl jumping down. And then there's a bunch of walkers down below. That's interesting. Wonder how that's going to go. And then she says, broken until the world ended. So, again, similarities between the two. They were broken even before the world fell. But we have this shot of an awesome location. I'm assuming this is in France too. And then we have this shot of the soldiers arresting the boy. So it looks like the French Mike Tyson actually found the little boy. We have this shot of Daryl fighting another guy. And then we have this shot. I don't know what to make of it. All I can think of is that this is like a flashback again of before the fall. And this is obviously a singer. So that's cool. Not much to really break down. We have Daryl giving this knife that he had to the little boy and saying, take it. We have Daryl jumping down here into this underground tunnel. This reminds me of The Whispers again. Remember when Beta jump down into the underground tunnels of Alexandria. This reminds me of that. But then Daryl says, if I don't make it back, and then we have this shot of Daryl killing this walker to protect the boy. This shot of the boy and Daryl together, and then Daryl here near the big church that we saw earlier. This is a pretty cool shot. But Daryl says, I want him to know that I tried. So if I don't make it back, I want him to know that I tried. Is he talking about the boy? Is he talking about Rick? I don't know. But this is definitely super interesting. We have this shot of the soldiers with the boy, so they've arrested the boy. We have Daryl here hugging the boy. We have Daryl here fighting off some walkers and some soldiers, I'm assuming. And then we have this shot, probably a flashback of some singers in France, I'm assuming. And then we have this shot of Daryl just traveling. This shot of Daryl being taken, so it looks like he does get arrested. I wonder if season 1 is going to end with Daryl being arrested or something. Anyway, we have the French Mike Tyson fighting Daryl here. We have this shot of a walker being chained to the wall, and it looks like it's trying to drag itself away, and it's like a quick scene, but I wonder if this is like a variant walker or a running walker, similar to the one that we actually saw in the post-credit scene of World Beyond, which was also in France. So that's a possibility. We have this awesome shot of the boy next to the Eiffel Tower. Some cool shot there. And then we have this shot of some walkers. We have the boy here again looking up at the Eiffel Tower. We have Daryl in that same garden that we saw in the cathedral with a super awesome looking gun, shooting someone, maybe a walker, maybe a survivor. And then he says, hell, I'm still trying. So he's still trying to find his way back and to protect the people he's there to protect. And then the final shot is the title card, new series September 10th. So the premiere of Daryl Dixon spinoff is September 10th. This video was longer than I wanted, but it is what it is. It was a pretty detailed trailer that I wanted to break down. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.